the pride nights that teams have, I think is nice, but um it almost feels a little perfunctory sometimes. And I'm even wearing my little, like, this is my little
Nice.
um but I think, like, what I was talking about before with the movements towards engaging with race and racism and like sexism and having more representation of kind of marginalized and like more diverse people in the sport, um I hope will lead to seeing it being a safer space for queer folks. I'm Dana Busgang. I use they, them pronouns. I'm 28 years old. I'm a rising fourth year part time law student at American University in DC, but I'm originally from northern New Jersey, just outside of Newark, hence the Devils fan.
Oh, you're a Devils fan. I'm so sorry for you.
I know. Thank you.
Take the empathy and sympathy where you can get it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I have hope. But yeah.
someday, someday. How did you get into hockey?
Yeah, so my paternal grandfather is from Montreal. And so I think it kind of came from him. My dad had his company had season tickets when I was growing up, so we used to go to games all the time. I think when I was young, I was more into the like just having fun. They used to have like these like ice cream and little hockey helmet cups, which was like my favorite thing, and that was
Love
my
that.
fun part of going to hockey games. But after a while, I started, me and my brother, I have an older brother who also would come, and we started playing in just some kind of local rec leagues around New Jersey. And so I played for a while, like into high school or so, and then had to quit because I broke both of my wrists within a
Mm,
week of each other. Um, at not doing anything hockey related, just being a klutz. And that kind of ended my playing career. But I've been a big Devils fan ever since, and a big hockey fan ever since, and it's kind of just a big part of my life now.
very cool. What do you love about hockey?
Um, I really love the kind of like story element of it. I think there's nothing like the drama of like playoff hockey or like the kind of storylines that you get. I mean, like this playoffs right now, right, is like Montreal, beating the Leafs in seven, and like the Islanders and Lightning facing each other for the second, consecutive year.
Yeah.
And just the drama of it and the storylines of it. I think like for me, I just feel like it's kind of unparalleled in other sports, and it's really beautiful. And I also love that it is such a team sport, and that, having one big superstar or maybe even two, one person can't drag a team all the way. They might be able to drag them into the playoffs or something like that. But, as we can see with McDavid and McKinnon and
Yeah.
Matthews, and all the big stars are kind of out of the playoffs at this point, and you see teams that are kind of more well-rounded. It's probably also coming from my being a Devils fan, with us never really having a big star besides Marty Brodeur, obviously,
Hmm.
but still managing to win cups. So
I was about to say, shout out Oilers.
yeah, the big Oilers energy. Yeah.
How could hockey be better for you and for the queer community?
Yeah. So I've been thinking about this a lot since I emailed you at first. Um, and I think that, for me, I think that all kind of marginalized and oppressed groups are very interlinked together. So, kind of everyone's, no one's free until we're all free kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, for me, seeing a lot of the movement over the last year in particular towards more like race equity and engagement, and more like gender diversity in the league, like seeing women being like, the Devils just hired Megan Duggan in their hockey development department, seeing more women in like men's broadcasts, seeing some of the stuff that's been going on around the league in terms of dealing with race and racism, and like Black Girl Hockey Club, which I think is like the coolest thing.
Renee's the coolest person in the world.
Yeah, I follow her on Twitter. I'm a big fan. And I mean, I just think that's such like a great example of like a way that is making the sport more accessible to populations that have, kind of been denied from not denied, but been a little bit excluded from participating in sports. And I think that, I don't know if there's one particular thing in there that could make hockey more friendly or towards queer folks, but I think that for me at least, seeing more engagement on just diversity in general, I think is like a good way of moving forward.
I love that. What knowing what you know about the sport, what keeps you in hockey?
What keeps me here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I think, like I said before, the kind of like the stories part of it, like I just like it's just something that's always fun, and every season is different. And also just it's part of me that's always been there, something that I played hockey since I was young, that I used to go to games when I was a kid all the time. That's just kind of always going to be there. Um, which is, it's pretty funny because most people like don't expect me to like be a hockey fan for some reason. They're like, that's like the unexpected part of my personality apparently. um I'm just not friends with a lot of sports fans in general. But and I think especially like after this last year with COVID, right, where everything was so out of our hands and out of our control and unfamiliar, like I won't lie, when the first Devils game in January started playing, like I got a little emotional just hearing like the broadcasters' voices again, and seeing hockey being played again. So I think like for me too, it New Jersey, the Devils being the only professional sports team left in New Jersey, also is just kind of like a tie to home, because I haven't lived in New Jersey in like almost 10 years at this point. So it's a little bit of like tradition and familiarity, and like fun and excitement.
And I'm sure the family aspect too must
Yeah.
play into it, you know.
Yeah, me and my brother, he's 4 years older than me. He lives in Florida, and our relationship is pretty much entirely only about hockey. Like if you look at our text thread, it's just we split like an NHL TV package so we can watch Devils
Nice.
games at a market. And we text each other like tweets back and forth from their social media accounts and stuff like that. And like I think I talked to his girlfriend more about like substantive life things than him, because we just watch hockey.
I love that. It reminds me of me and my brother.
Yeah.
Um, what gives you hope for queer people in the sport?
Um, I mean, I think stuff like, the kind of like the pride nights that teams have, I think is nice, but um it almost feels a little perfunctory sometimes. And I'm even wearing my little, like, this is my little
Nice.
um but I think like what I was talking about before with the movements towards engaging with race and racism, and like sexism, and having more representation of kind of marginalized and like more diverse people in the sport, um I hope will lead to seeing it being a safer space for queer folks. I'm sure statistically there has to be one NHL player who's at least a little bit queer somewhere in there.
Oh,
But
there's more than one.
I'm sure, yeah.
There is.
um, and but like knowing like I'm in an industry that's dominated by old rich white men, and I know how scary it was for me to like be in this industry and be out in this industry, so I can't imagine how physically scary and also like career wise risky it is to be able to be yourself in this kind of league. And I think until that's not so much the case, it's hard, because seeing people who look like you represented in sports and media is really important. And I don't know, what that could look like queer representation in hockey, in the NHL in particular. Like I think, seeing it outside of the NHL, Harrison Brown, being an openly trans man, and seeing all the beautiful queer love stories in the NWHL, and the women's hockey league kind of world. I would love to see that translate into men's hockey and into the NHL. But I'm just not pessimistic about it, but I'm not sure when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen. But I feel like the work that's being done around diversity in general, can only help in that sense.
I like that. It's so true. Dana, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that like, I've been thinking a lot about this over the past couple of days, and thinking about, I think a lot of prejudice that you see in the world comes out of fear, when people feel threatened, feel like something's being taken away from them. And so I feel like homophobia and transphobia a lot comes from people's fear of something. And it makes it really hard for queer folks to feel ownership over things that they love and they want to participate in. And it's really hard to feel like you're not welcome in a space for something that's like, for me, you know, like I was saying, it's such a big part of my life and growing up, and seeing, you know, homophobia or transphobia or something like that in the sport is really sad. But it's also that, like, you know, I know the NHL like slogan is like hockey is for everyone or something, which is really true, right? Like this, you know, this has always been a sport that's, you know, there are other groups of people besides just the kind of white male base that is interested in this sport. And I think it's only a good thing to have it open up and be more accessible to different groups of people. And that's how the sport's going to grow, and that's how the sport's going to become, you know, something much bigger than it is now, hopefully. And so I just hope that people who feel threatened or feel scared don't, because we all just want to enjoy the game. And I hope that, you know, that can be, a little bit more welcoming in the future.
I love that. It's I was having a conversation one day with a friend of mine. She's actually super cool. She's the first trans woman to play trans on a soap opera.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and she's incredibly insightful. And we were having a conversation, and she said to me, she used an analogy of a restaurant. And currently, if we take hockey, for example, all the straight white men are sitting down at tables eating. And we're outside and we're looking in. It's not that we want to take their table and not allow them to eat. We just want to be able to eat too. And it may mean we all wait an extra 5 minutes for our food, but we can all eat.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. A great analogy. Yeah.
And yeah, so I've kept that with me everywhere I've gone, everywhere I've spoken, and it's something that I keep in mind when looking at intersections of other groups and identities when I, you know, do work and whatnot, because everyone just wants to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see a lot of that when, like, and I think we saw this a lot coming out of last summer with all the protests and everything, when brands and sports teams started posting about the protests, about racial justice, posting about the impacts of things that are happening. I saw a lot of people just being like, oh, it's just a sport, like just let them play, like just let them do this, without understanding that, you know, to people who are standing outside the restaurant, that's almost like a, you know, like a welcome sign, being like, okay, it's safe for me to be here. And so that's a really nice way to think about it.
And yeah, and especially for youth trying to play sport, you
Yeah.
know, it tells them they can be themselves and play. And the more we let everyone into it, the more welcome everyone will be, in sport can become an empowerment tool as opposed to an oppressive force.
Yeah. And as opposed to like an exclusionary thing, another space where queer people feel like they can't be themselves and be welcomed. And I think especially right now with all of the, in the US, with all of the state-based like bills about, you know, trans kids in sports, where there's like, you know, 10 to 15 states, I think, that are passing legislation about not allowing trans kids to play sports, for various reasons, that it's really, I think it's really important to, um, you know, show that that's how impactful sports can be on young people, and how impactful being able to be welcomed into those spaces is on not just them like playing those sports, but on their lives and on their futures, and then for their mental health too. So
yeah, and many of those bills are being funded by, allegedly by, Chick-fil-A and their CEO, who also partner with 10 NHL teams.
I
So
saw that recently. Yeah.
yeah, so
Um,
I just want to put that out there, so when people see this, they'll recognize that.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's obviously right. It's Pride Month. So we see all of the corporations that are funding anti-LGBTQ, you know, legislation, or actively harming queer people, changing their logos to a pride logo. My favorite is the weapons contractors, that like change their logos to like a rainbow flag. I just think that's really funny, but
Mind-boggling.
yeah.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for talking with us. I can't wait to share your story. I hope the other Doubles fan that's out there sees it,
Ouch.
since there's probably only two of you.
Me and my
So
brother,
yeah,
yeah.
I hope your brother sees it. And thank you, and hopefully, you know, kids are going to see this, and your representation matters. And thank you so much.